What if the greatest engineers in history never touched a keyboard and never needed one? 7 ships anchor this story, each one built from little more than wood, rope, and instinct, each one solving a problem that should have been beyond its builders. By the end, the line separating primitive from impossible will look a great deal thinner than it does right now. Number 7. The Paleolithic Dugout Canoe. In July of 2019, 5 paddlers pushed off the eastern coast of Taiwan in a canoe carved from a single-seater trunk, using only tools a Stone Age craftsman could have made. 4 men and 1 woman made up the crew. Their destination was Yonaguni Island, more than 200 kilometers away, across the Kuroshio, one of the most powerful ocean currents on Earth. For most of the crossing, the island would not even be visible. The voyage set out to answer a question that had frustrated archaeologists for years. How did humans reach these islands 30,000 years ago, with nothing resembling a modern boat? Before any paddle touched water, the team had to build the canoe the way a Paleolithic craftsman would have. Researchers felled a Japanese cedar using replica stone axes, then hollowed the trunk by hand, a process that took weeks of sustained, repetitive labor, with tools that could barely hold an edge. The research team had already tried twice and failed with other designs. A reed bundle raft, built and rebuilt over several seasons, could not hold together against the current. A bamboo raft came next, and it fared no better, breaking apart before it ever reached open water, which raised a difficult question. If reeds and bamboo could not survive the crossing, what could? The dugout canoe was the last option on the list, and by that point, few researchers expected it to succeed where 2 carefully engineered alternatives had already failed. The canoe held. Paddling in shifts for more than 45 hours, guided only by the sun, the stars, and the shape of the swells beneath them, the crew reached Yonaguni and proved something no computer model had settled on its own. Paleolithic humans crossed one of the roughest currents in the Pacific, using nothing but a hollowed-out log and raw human endurance. The deeper researchers dug into this crossing, the stranger the story became. Reed and bamboo, the 2 materials assumed to be the ancient world's obvious choices, turned out to be the ones that failed. The real answer had been sitting in plain sight the entire time: a single tree trunk, and the will to spend 2 days paddling blind into open ocean. That canoe crossed open water with nothing more than muscle and timing. The next vessel on this list did something almost the opposite. It hid a manufacturing secret directly on its own hull, written into the wood itself. Number 6. The Marsala Punic warship. In 1971, marine archaeologist Honor Frost recovered the remains of a Carthaginian warship from the seabed near Marsala, off the western coast of Sicily. The wreck dated to the closing years of the First Punic War, sunk sometime after 241 BC, likely during or shortly after the naval battle that ended the conflict. At first glance, the timbers looked like any other wreck of the period: oak planking, mortise and tenon joints, a hull built for speed rather than cargo, likely a fast scout or supply vessel, rather than a heavy warship, sunk in the closing chapter of a war Carthage was already losing at sea. Then conservators noticed the letters. Painted directly onto sections of the hull, in Punic script, were single characters and short symbols that did not match any decoration or inscription researchers recognized. They were assembly marks. Each mark corresponded to a specific timber, cut and shaped at a separate location, then labeled so shipwrights elsewhere could fit the pieces together without redesigning the vessel from scratch. Carthage was mass-producing standardized parts and assembling them like components on a production line. 2,000 years before the concept resurfaces anywhere else in the historical record. A warship built this way could be replaced faster than an enemy could sink it. By the final years of the First Punic War, Rome had already destroyed fleet after Carthaginian fleet, and standardized shipbuilding may explain how Carthage kept fielding new ones, even as the war ground it down. Standardized parts explain how Carthage built ships quickly. The next entry on this list explains how one civilization built ships fast enough to outrun anything else on the water, using nothing but coordinated human muscle. Number 5. The Greek trireme. For nearly 3 centuries, the trireme dominated naval warfare across the Mediterranean. A hull barely 6 meters wide carried 170 rowers arranged in 3 tiers, each oar timed to the same stroke, driving a bronze ram fixed to the bow at the waterline. The rowers themselves were free citizens rather than slaves, since the ship's survival depended entirely on their coordination, and every one of them could take up arms if the ship closed for boarding. Ancient sources describe speeds that sound almost implausible for a wooden ship powered entirely by human effort. For a long time, historians treated those numbers as exaggeration, the kind of inflated claim a culture makes about its own military technology. A ship that light, that narrow, moving that fast under oar power alone, read like a story that had grown taller with each retelling. Naval architect John Coates decided to test the claim directly, rather than debate it on paper. In 1987, a full-scale reconstruction named the Olympias entered the water in Greece, crewed largely by volunteers with no experience rowing a trireme. Even with an untrained crew, the ship reached speeds close to what the ancient sources described and turned within about 2 hull lengths. Historians involved in the project noted that a genuinely trained Athenian crew would likely have gone faster still. The ancient accounts held up under testing. Modern doubt had simply underestimated what 170 coordinated rowers in the right hull, aimed at the right target, were capable of doing. Coordinated human power explains the trireme's speed. The next ship on this list moved at Caligula's command through something closer to modern mechanical engineering than muscle or wind, and it sat buried at the bottom of an Italian lake for 19 centuries before anyone found it. Number 4. The Nemi ships. On the floor of Lake Nemi, south of Rome, lay the remains of 2 enormous ceremonial ships built for the Emperor Caligula sometime in the 1st century AD. For centuries, they were the subject of rumor rather than study, until Benito Mussolini ordered the lake partially drained between 1929 and 1932, so archaeologists could finally reach them. So, if channels like this one are worth your evening, subscribing means the next video lands in front of you without having to go looking for it. What they found went well beyond marble floors and mosaic decoration. Bronze fittings recovered from the wreckage included rotating mechanisms designed to let statues and fixtures pivot smoothly on their bases, along with plumbing systems for running water and heated flooring. None of it matched what historians expected from a 1st-century pleasure craft. Barges built purely for spectacle are not supposed to need engineering this precise. The rotating fittings worked on a principle close to a modern ball bearing, letting heavy fixtures turn with minimal friction, a solution that would not become common in engineering again for close to a millennium and a half. Caligula's ships were floating palaces with mechanical systems that would not look out of place several centuries later. The scale of the ships matched the ambition of their fittings. Each barge stretched longer than a modern basketball court, built not to sail anywhere in particular, but to serve as a floating platform for feasts, temples, and imperial spectacle on a lake barely large enough to contain them. Tragically, most of this evidence survived less than 2 decades after its recovery. Retreating German forces destroyed both ships by fire in 1944, and almost everything we know about the mechanisms comes from photographs, drawings, and the handful of fittings stored elsewhere at the time. Caligula's barges hid engineering nobody expected on a lake in Italy. The next entry on this list is an entire fleet, so large that historians still argue about whether the numbers describing it can possibly be true. Number 3. Jang He's treasure fleet. In 1405, a fleet of more than 200 ships and tens of thousands of crew left the mouth of the Yangtze River under the command of Admiral Jang He, a court official who had been castrated and enslaved as a boy before rising to lead the largest naval expedition the Ming dynasty had ever assembled. Official Ming records describe the flagships, known as treasure ships, as vessels far longer than anything built in Europe for the next several hundred years. Skeptics have pushed back hard on those figures. A wooden hull stretched anywhere close to the length the records suggest should, according to the physics of wooden shipbuilding, sag and eventually break apart under its own weight. Critics often point to the Vasa, a much smaller Swedish warship that sank on its very first voyage in 1628, as proof of how quickly ambition can outpace what timber can support. In 1957, excavation at the former Longjiang shipyard in Nanjing recovered a rudder post more than 10 meters long enough to belong only to a ship of enormous scale. Combined with references to internal compartmentalization in the historical record, this points to the likely solution. Watertight bulkheads divided the hull into sealed sections, so a breach in one compartment would not sink the entire ship. It is a design principle European shipbuilders would not adopt as standard practice for nearly 400 years. Jang He's fleet sailed farther than anything built before it, and on one voyage, it returned with a giraffe, which the Ming court took as a sign the fleet had reached the edge of the known world. It may have also solved a structural problem the rest of the world had not yet learned to ask about. Chinese engineers solved the challenge of scale with internal compartments. The next entry on this list solved a different problem entirely: how to cross the largest ocean on the planet without a single instrument to guide the way. Number 2. The Polynesian voyaging canoes. The Pacific Ocean covers roughly a third of the planet's surface, scattered with islands separated by open water in every direction. Long before European ships reached the region, Polynesian navigators had already settled nearly every habitable island inside that vast triangle, using double-hulled canoes and a navigation system passed down entirely through memory. On many islands, the Guild of Navigators held higher status than warriors or chiefs, and training a single navigator to lead a canoe across open ocean could take decades of oral instruction before a student was ever trusted with the voyage. For generations, many European scientists refused to accept that this settlement had been deliberate. The prevailing theory held that Pacific islands were populated by accident, by canoes carried off course by storms and currents, rather than guided there on purpose. Wayfinding without instruments, the argument went, could not reliably cross thousands of kilometers of open ocean. Someone eventually decided to test that theory directly, on open water, rather than argue it on paper. In 1976, the double-hulled canoe Hokulea left Hawaii bound for Tahiti, a journey of roughly 4,000 kilometers, guided by navigator Mau Piailug, using only the stars, the wind, and the pattern of ocean swells beneath the hull, with no compass, chart, or instrument of any kind. The canoe reached Tahiti within about 40 kilometers of its target. Later, computer modeling confirmed what the voyage had already demonstrated. The odds of settling the Pacific by accidental drift alone were close to zero. Polynesian navigators had been extraordinarily precise, using a form of knowledge Western science had spent centuries dismissing as folklore. Polynesian navigators crossed open ocean by reading the sky and the sea itself. The final ship on this list crossed a different ocean entirely, using a hull built to bend rather than break, and it reached a continent nobody in Europe believed was there. Number 1. The Viking drakkar. By the 9th century, Viking shipbuilders had settled on a design unlike anything else on the water. The drakkar, a long, narrow ship with no deck, built using overlapping planks fastened together in a technique known as clinker construction. Timbers this thin, laid this way, looked like a design that should have cracked apart the first time it met serious open water weather. excavated examples, including the ship recovered from a burial mound at Gokstad, Norway, in 1880, told a different story. So did the ships later recovered from Roskilde Fjord in Denmark, built shallow enough in draft to sail up rivers and across open ocean alike. Norse sailors navigated these ships using little more than the sun, the stars, and a crystal known as a sunstone, said to reveal the sun's position even through heavy cloud cover. Clinker-built hulls flexed under pressure. Large waves bent the ship's frame slightly, and the hull absorbed the impact instead of fighting it directly, then returned to shape once the wave had passed. That same flexibility gave the ship an extremely shallow draft, letting it sail up rivers, cross shallow coastal water, and still survive open ocean crossings other ship designs of the era could not attempt. It was this combination that carried Norse sailors to the shores of North America some 500 years before Columbus, a landing confirmed by the excavated settlement at L'Anse aux Meadows in Newfoundland. A ship built to bend under pressure turned out to be sturdier than anything built to stand rigid against it. 7 ships, 7 different problems, and in every case, the solution came from people working with wood, rope, and a level of patience modern engineering rarely demands anymore. Somewhere between a hollowed-out log crossing the Kuroshio and a clinker hull reaching Newfoundland, the line separating primitive from impossible stops making much sense. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more ancient mysteries and impossible discoveries.